Thank you. I've proved myself to be the most ignorant at using the online tools as usual, but here we go. Let me start just by saying thank you to all the people who have joined the webinar for taking an interest. Thank you to Yaning and Eshan for doing all the work to get this organised. And particularly thank you to all the contributors, all the speakers, because I've come away from this feeling as though I've had a good summary of the state of the art of pavement LCA as a whole, and with some particular reference to how to include RAP in LCA, which, as Yaning said right at the beginning, is one of our objectives. Well, we heard the objectives of our group, but why are they our objectives? What outcomes do we want from this RAP task group? What we really want to do is to try and better enable the use of life cycle assessment by decision makers to decide whether or not RAP is the right material to use when they're specifying their work. And to do that, we've got to understand the barriers associated with using life cycle assessment in general, and particularly in integrating RAP into life cycle assessment processes. If we can understand that, then we can make some recommendations to decision makers about a standardized LCA approach, including RAP in their decision-making process. So I've made an attempt to summarize what we've heard today as we've gone along. I've managed to fit it on one slide, so I've certainly missed a lot, but this is my attempt to summarize what we heard. Firstly, well, we heard right from the beginning from Alissa that standards, the ISO standards, for instance, for LCA are general guides. They don't tell you how to do your LCA. They give you a framework. And so we need to decide how we're going to apply them. And then right at the end, we heard two presentations about product category rules. These are the rules that tell you how to apply those LCA frameworks to your particular products. Getting to that process, getting to your product category rules, and in fact doing your life cycle analysis, is an iterative process. That shouldn't surprise us. That's what it says in the ISO framework standards, in fact. And so the presentations between Alissa's and Richard's and Heather's at the end gave us a lot of information about what needs to happen in that iterative process, I think. First of all, we need to understand, agree, and then include the most impactful processes or materials. We need to understand which factors are going to have the major impacts on the results of our life cycle assessment. That then will help us to understand which is the most important data. How any implicit assumptions in the tools we're using will impact the results, and how those most important data will contribute to the uncertainty in our results. And it's that uncertainty which is crucial for, I think, for a decision maker in deciding how to interpret the results of their life cycle assessment. And we need to understand the most important assumptions in our life cycle assessments, be that assumptions about product service lives or methodological assumptions about how to allocate impacts, and we heard several speakers refer to those. Furthermore, we need transparency. Transparency in the product category rules and how they're being used. Transparency in how they lead then to the environmental product declarations, and perhaps most importantly, the data sources underlying those environmental product declarations. We're not going to be able to achieve this without collaboration between the various stakeholders. Several of our speakers referred to stakeholders. We see Rilem as that collaboration platform, or at least as one collaboration platform. So what are we going to do next, or within the Rilem group? And this is not written in stone. If you think there's something we should be doing to help meet our objectives and gain those outcomes, now is your chance to influence that process. Well, I think we need to understand the implications of the product category rules, how they're written, and which product category rules we choose on the LCA results, in our case, with particular reference to the inclusion of RAP. We need to identify data. That data might be in environmental product declarations, might be in other published life cycle inventories, it might be publicly available data that Heather was referring to in the last presentation. And then, as part of the iterative process I've referred to, in order to understand what are the most impactful data, what are the most impactful assumptions, we need to do some sensitivity analysis. So I've identified in the last 2.25 hours then, what I think need to be our next steps, but I'm interested in your input. If these are the next steps, how are we going to achieve them? Well, I think we can only do that by applying PCRs, applying life cycle assessments to case studies. And then going through this iterative process and trying to identify then these most important data, etc. That's how we'll identify where the gaps are in the knowledge. And when we've understood those gaps, then we may be in a position to produce the recommendations that we want to produce for decision makers on what we think is best practice for life cycle assessment and product category rules, specifically including RAP. So lastly, thank you very much for joining us. Now, I want you to think about how can you help us? What can you bring to the process? And please keep in touch. There's Yaning's email address again. Email him, tell him if you want to continue working with us. Tell us what you can bring to the table, perhaps in running case studies or in providing data, etc. But mostly, as I draw this to a close, Eshan may have some closing remarks, but the final thing I want to say is thank you for your enthusiasm, thank you for your time, and keep in touch.
Thank you, Tony, very much. And again, I'd really like to, on behalf of the technical committee, really thank Tony and Yaning for putting this webinar together through their task group. And as we saw, I mean, this really, Tony captured it very well. There's a lot of things that are happening in the world of pavement lifecycle assessment, and then especially in context of asphalt pavement recycling, there are a lot of missing gaps, and that's what we are trying to fill in by having this task group that's again led by Tony and Yaning, and the whole idea is to work in this collaborative setup. Rilem is entirely voluntary organization, and is really established to help improve a state of knowledge. So one of the questions that I just got is, what is this task group? And this task group is really pavement life cycle assessment for asphalt recycling. That's really the name of task group, and it's focused on, as you saw in Yaning's presentation, with number of objectives to help make things more clear, bring in more visibility, and try to take out some of the fuzziness and some of the unknowns in for any person who's trying to use either LCA or a subset of LCAs in forms of declarations or things of that nature. How can we do things in a fair and right way when it comes to recycling, whether it's just incorporation of RAP into your hot mix, but also in terms of in-place recycling. This particular task group is TG4 or task group 4. So if you go to that link that I posted on the chat window, very simple link, it'll probably take you 20 seconds to fill in the form. All it does is it helps us get your information so that whenever we have future events like this, we can copy you. And also for task group leaders, specifically in this case for Yaning and Tony, to contact you to get information from you, and for you to contact them to tell them what you are working on and how you can contribute to this joint effort. So those are all the things that I have to say on this topic. If anyone else has any burning questions or any other key comments that they want to make, please go ahead and convey them. But other than that, I think we are ending right on time. So once again, appreciate everyone's time and help in having this event put together. Just one last note, mostly for speakers, I will be contacting you or either myself or Yaning to ask formally your permission to post the recordings from this webinar, and also if you allow, then we'd like to post the PDFs of your presentations for people who are involved with this particular task group. So you will be expecting emails from us. With that email, we'll also put list of questions that we had received that we didn't have chance to go through during the presentation. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, and I will be ending the webinar here.